views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. We really have a treat for you tonight. More than a year ago, Bronx percussion great Bobby Sanabria was on this show to talk about his complete Latin jazz reworking of the entire score of maybe the greatest musical of all time, West Side Story. Well, he's back tonight to give us a first listen to the hot off the presses CD of that incredible music, and also to update us with exciting news about an upcoming Lincoln Center performance, which you are going to want to know about and you're going to want to be at, because I'm going to be there too. And for an added treat, drum roll please, he has brought with him the daughter of Leonard Bernstein, who was maybe America's greatest conductor and composer, and of course, the genius behind West Side Story. She has a delightful new book, and that is this book, which is called Famous Father Girl, and she's going to give us the inside and the insight into not only the life of the great maestro, but of the incredible Bernstein family. All of this right on time for the 60th anniversary of West Side Story and the centennial of the maestro's birth. We couldn't be more excited to have you both on the program. Welcome back, Bobby Sanabria. Nice to have you.
Thank you. It's a privilege and honor, especially being next to this young lady here who represents royalty.
And I was going to say, welcome to our new Bronx friend, Jamie Bernstein. Nice to have you with us.
Great to be here.
Bobby, my copy of the CD is all mucked up with Bobby's signature, which is very nice. Give me an update on the project. So I looked it up. It was about a year and a couple of months ago that you were here, and I went to the Manhattan School of Music performance, and it was brand new. It was this exciting project that you had undertaken. Where are we at from then to now?
Well, when I premiered it last February in 2017, I test drove it with my students, the student orchestra that I teach at the Manhattan School of Music, the Afro-Cuban Jazz Orchestra. Fantastic group of young musicians. Every semester that I've taught there for the last 20 years, I always have brilliant young players. And it was a 2.5-hour extravaganza. Now, the original West Side Story was about 2.5 hours from beginning to end. And
with dialogue and scenes and acting and everything else.
This was 2.5 hours of just music, adapted all to different Latin American rhythms and styles, and along with jazz, obviously, that was inherited in the original show. So one thing I learned from the performance, I says, wow, this is fantastic, but this is too brutal on the brass players. So I started editing with my skills as an arranger, started editing, restructuring the music, etc. And then it turns out that we got a 3-night engagement for my own Grammy-nominated multiverse big band at Dizzy's Club Coca-Cola in November. So I said, this is the perfect opportunity to record the music in all of its glory. And on the final night, which was November 19th, and as Kismet happens, November 19th is when Puerto Rico was come upon by Christopher Columbus in 1493. Who's in the audience?
This is a night of history.
Yeah. Who's in the audience? But none other than Ms. Bernstein here, who loved what we did, and I was flabbergasted that she was there. And I have to thank Janice Siegel, who's a mutual friend of ours from the Manhattan Transfer, the great vocalist, for inviting her.
And so we're going to mention it now. We'll mention it later on in the show because I know you're excited about it. I'm excited about it. You will be performing this with the Multiverse Big Band at Lincoln Center.
That's August 10th. It's free, and Lincoln Center, where Lincoln Center is actually where they filmed West Side Story. So how's that for serendipity, kismet, or as we would say, ache, positive energy?
I want to bring the whole notion of Leonard Bernstein's greatness, his brilliance. One of the things you told me, and because I always look to you for musical styles and idea of what music is really about, you were educating all of us really about the variety of cultures represented in West Side Story. And I remember distinctly that I asked you, do you think it was just because he was just so in tune so these things came about? And you said no, it was because Leonard Bernstein really understood cultures of music and what the nature, and it was deliberate that he put those styles in there. Why don't you talk and remind folks what that was, and then we're going to use that to bring Jamie and her family into it.
What was amazing about him was that he looked at everything as high art, from the simplest folk tune to even a song like Happy Birthday. He intrinsically appreciated the genius of simplicity and the complexity that high art can sometimes get to. And in West Side Story, what's amazing about the show is that he combines lyric opera, of course, ballet. He combines jazz. He combines certain forms of Latin music. Even has vaudeville in there. I mean, everything, as we would say in the Bronx, and a bag of chips is in West Side Story. And he does it in such a complex yet accessible way. The music of West Side Story really is the most complex music that's ever been written and performed on Broadway. So that's why it was so groundbreaking. And the other thing was that he upped the ante, because for West Side Story, you had to be able to sing music that was very modern in terms of its interpretation, using modern harmony coming from jazz and from atonal music, and as we would say. And you had to be able to dance, and you had to be able to act. Now, in vaudeville, there had been people that could do all those three things, but not on the technical level that was demanded of West Side Story. So the triple threat was really created with West Side Story.
And you know, I had mentioned to Jamie before she came on, I spent the weekend with this book. And I'm not going to be able to sing it, but the opening, the signature notes at the beginning.
That was good.
Okay, thank you. Don't ask me to do it again. You wrote that this came from the shofar, that this was where Leonard Bernstein got the notion. That was extraordinary to me.
Yeah.
As a Jewish boy who grew up in the Bronx, loving West Side Story, that was unbelievable.
Right. Well, in the shofar, the ram's horn that they blow in the synagogue on the high holy days, makes those notes. Ba, 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 ba. So my father took those three notes and turned them into the key of the whole score of West Side Story. Those are like the notes that you can track all the way through the score, right, Bobby?
Yeah.
It's so ingenious, and it's the first thing you hear. Ba-dum, ba-dum. It's how the jets whistle to each other, and if you anagram those three notes in different ways, switch them around, you get Maria,
Wow.
and you get boy, boy, crazy boy.
It's the whole
Stay
thing.
cool, boy.
Why did you think that what Bobby was doing was a good thing? And I know you're very protective of your father's legacy, appropriately enough, because it deserves to be protected. But this, you seem to have said, you know what? I'm endorsing this. My family endorsing
Endorsing is too dry a word for
Have a glass of water.
how we all feel about what Bobby did. My brother and sister and I are all crazy for this project. And Alexander, my brother, was the one who first experienced it, because he was at Manhattan School of Music when you did it with your students that first time. And he came back and said, oh my God, I heard the greatest thing. You're just going to flip when you hear what Bobby Sanabria is cooking up. And then I got to see it when they did it with the Multiverse Orchestra at Dizzy's Club Coca-Cola last year. And then I went
And
crazy.
he didn't know you were going to be there.
No, you didn't know, did you? Did
And
you
it
know?
was- and you went crazy. So what-
Actually, Janice
Did she
had
spill
told
the
me,
beans?
Spill the beans?
she goes, I'm bringing somebody.
Oh, okay.
And I go, who you bringing? Don't worry about it. And the rest is
That's so
what
Janice.
was it about this? And then I have to attach that to the question of what would the maestros say about somebody taking his music and his incredible score and doing something with it like what they did.
Oh, I wish he were still around to hear this. I think he would love it. He would love the inventiveness of it and the appreciation of his own music that you can hear in every bar of how Bobby and his orchestra reinterpreted it. It's all so true to the original and true to the spirit of the score that I'm certain that my father would have thought it was just the coolest reimagining possible.
What an ironic choice of words. Cool, yes. I want to ask you a little bit about the book. As I told you when I greeted you this evening, I feel like I know you because it's an incredibly personal work of somebody and a family that was so well known. Did you hesitate at the beginning because you've laid it all out there? Did you hesitate and say, maybe I ought not to go there? Or was the objective from the beginning to say, everybody should know everything about this because this was incredible?
Well, first of all, my brother and sister were right with me every step of the way, and I told them they had veto power. If there was anything I'd written that they didn't want to have out there, they had permission to say so, and I would take it out. And in the end, they really didn't object to anything. My personal rule of thumb when I was writing this book, and pretty much in life, is that if you try to hide something, it's just going to come around and bite
It's
you
not
in the
gonna
butt.
go well.
So my whole sense was, tell the story the way it really felt and how I experienced it, and tell it in the context of love and truth, and just be real about it, and that's the best you can do in this world.
And I think it makes it, and it made it certainly for me, a compelling work. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I have
Leonard?
to say something. There are certain, every family is complex. Every family has issues, especially from the.
He said knowingly.
Especially from the Bronx, but I read the book. I just couldn't put it down. It was like one of those things that it took me basically a day and a half to read it completely.
Mm-hmm.
And what she did is bare her soul, but the word I like to use is elegant, because she tackled some really incredibly personal issues, especially between the relationship of her and
And
her
her
siblings
family
and her
members. Yes.
and her father. But she did it in such an elegant way that it wasn't titillating like some people try to sell books to.
Yeah, it certainly
things.
wasn't like that.
It was,
Thank you.
I want to address just the whole notion and of the idea of being the daughter of the famous Father Girl. That's the name of the book. The daughter of somebody who is world renowned, world famous, talented beyond comprehension, and you wrestled for many years with your own role in that. You loved him, you adored him, you respected him, you were aware of how brilliant he was, and it must put just immense pressure on a daughter and somebody who wants to be that. And I know it's clear in the book that you tried. I pulled out a phrase, and I just wonder if many famous or children of famous people feel this way. I longed for Daddy to praise my music, but also I couldn't bear it. I thought that just in so many ways summarized so much. So maybe you could, in a very short period of time, explain a little bit about what that's like.
Well, it is true. I mean, I think lots of people everywhere have that feeling about their parents, that they want the praise and the attention, but also they sort of would rather be left alone, and we have that conflict as we're growing up. But I made everything so much harder on myself by trying to be a musician myself. That was where I really ratcheted up the anxiety and the conflict, because I was musical, sure. I love music, and I have a good ear and everything, but the minute I tried to be a musician, I drove myself crazy because I was always comparing myself to my dad, and
there was no way you could do that.
Forget it.
Yeah.
I knew he was a sort of larger than life entity and a genius beyond the calculating, and that I was not. I was a good musician. I had the potential to be a good musician, but I was not a capital G genius, and it took me a long time to process all that out.
Accept that.
And so I talk about this feeling in the book by describing it as always having one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake at the same time. That's kind of how I went through life.
That's the conflict that I just was addressing. But also you, and the reason I'm bringing this up, folks, because I want you to check out the book, enjoy it. There's so much in there, and when I read that you got into the dressing room to see John, Paul, George, and Ringo before the Ed Sullivan Show, did you pinch yourself as you were growing up and saying, I can't believe I'm doing this, or did you just accept this as, well, it's, you know,
Are you
my
kidding?
daddy.
I'm still pinching myself. That's why I wrote the book. The whole book is a pinch.
It really is.
Like, this actually all really happened to me. Like, I'm pinching myself.
Let's bring us back to West Side Story. Now, you were a youngster when West Side Story came out. Were you aware that your father had created this world-renowned piece that was going to live forever?
Not
or
at
were you
the
just
time.
too young?
I was too young. I was 5.
Right.
I wasn't even allowed to see it on Broadway when
Because it
it
was-
opened. It was
right.
too violent.
Right.
You know, the knife fights and the gunshot at the end. Like, you're not going to take your 5-year-old to that. So I didn't see it on Broadway until it had gone out on the road and come back 2 years later to Broadway for like a second run. I think I saw it then. And then when the movie came out, by then I was like 10 years old, and then I was really the right age for it. And that was when I really fell in love with the whole thing.
And then you pinched yourself and said, oh, that was my daddy who created this, the guy I know so well, who's affectionate, and he, like all good fathers, he was funny and he was loving, and I mean, all the things to
Sure.
the nth level.
And you know, when you're growing up in your family, it's just your family. You don't have anything to compare it to. You don't know how your parents, you know, compare with the other parents in your class at school. So it took me a long time to figure out that there was something different about my family life, and that I wasn't, all I ever really wanted, as I say in the book, is to be normal. I just wanted to be normal.
You know, I was going to ask you that. Is there a yearning to say, gee whiz, listen, the money, the fame, and all the other things, the trappings, the good trappings that come with it, I would give it all up to just be anonymous, not be part of this?
I just wanted to be like the kids on the TV sitcoms I watched. I wanted to live in the suburbs and live next door to the Cleavers.
Yeah, to the Cleavers.
So did I.
Right. That's what we all wanted. Like, I didn't want to live in the city.
I hate to tell you, it's a little too late for that for
Yeah.
both of you.
And I don't really want to be there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, that's what everybody aspired to, was this utterly made up, make-believe world in the suburbs that we saw on TV shows.
And now the funny thing is the people in the suburbs, the children of those people want to be
In the city.
in the city.
Well, of course, they want to be where Bobby Sanabria is playing West Side Story Reimagined. Well, we're going to play a clip of it.
Sure.
I'm
good.
really thrilled because Bobby gave us the permission. I mean, I don't know if it's been broadcast before. I'm going to take make the assertion that this will be the first broadcast of this incredible piece of work. Before we do, did you learn anything about the music that you hadn't anticipated by going through it and changing it and working with it? Was there anything that there must have been things
Well,
that
the first
struck
thing
you?
the first thing that I learned was the whole opening about the shofar with the Jewish horn,
Right.
because
I'm still I'm not going to be able to sing it well, but she sang it.
well the whole thing about the 3 notes is that every time I would see people of Jewish descent, older people, in the opening, I would always notice they would be smiling. And I finally asked somebody, why are you smiling? And they would tell me, that's the shofar, you know. So, and that's how I learned about it when I was young. I said, wow, this is really ingenious.
It's
And also the hidden things that are present in the movie. I've never seen the show, except a high school production where
Yes, I think we all did, yeah.
where my sister was in. But the hidden, all great art is defined by nuance and subtlety, and there's some incredible subtlety in the movie and in the show.
Which you can miss because of the drama. Okay, here we go. We are going to play This is G. Officer Krupke as Reimagined. We're not going to play the whole thing. It's about 6 or 7 minutes long, but we'll give you a couple of minutes, and you can hear this is first broadcast of the Bobby Sanabria and the Multiverse Big Band of Leonard Bernstein's West Side Story Reimagined. Let it rip. go. Take a little applause for the audience here. And only a clip. And the entire score is there, complete with introductions of each piece. Talk to me about some of the
Well, in this
the
case,
percussions.
in Krumke, I always looked at him as a sympathetic figure in the play.
Because he was trying his best.
Yeah, he's just a cop doing his job. But what I did with this reimagining, it's in 1957, it was about the conflict between the working class whites and the Puerto Ricans moving into the West Side, and now it's the reimagining is the sons and daughters of those working class whites who left the neighborhood to blacks and Puerto Ricans. Now the sons and daughters want those neighborhoods back, and they're coming back into the neighborhood, and now it's not just blacks and Puerto Ricans. It's Colombians, it's Ecuadorians, it's Mexicans, it's people from West Africa, it's people from India, etc. So
I
Krumke
was
is
about to say, it sounds like the Bronx to me.
yeah. So Krumke's going through the neighborhood and he hears Puerto Rican bomba en plena. He hears Dominican merengue, Haitian compas. He also hears funk, New Orleans second line, representing the African American
And it's
community.
all in there.
It's like he's walking his beat, and you hear him
Right.
walking down the street with
And
all
at,
the rhythms.
and at the very end,
And that was in your mind as you were composing?
Yeah. And Jeremy Fletcher, who was a former student of mine, graduated in Manhattan School of Music, he did a fabulous job of getting those ideas across. And then at the very end, it breaks into like almost like a striptease thing with Sharif Clayton on the trumpet growling
There's your
and
vaudeville,
so
ladies and
yeah, right. So that he's now the hookers, the beatniks, the hipsters.
It's all there.
Yeah.
It's New York and all its color and
So-
brilliance and anger and everything.
Right. So Krumke really, he's enforcing the law, but he really digs the people in the neighborhood.
You know, I really missed one very important item, and it's important to Bobby, and I know it's important to Jamie, so we're going to give you the first crack at it, and then you.
Sure.
The proceeds of this. You should talk about what the proceeds are going.
Oh, yeah.
If you do pick up the CD, and you gotta. Where is it? Where do they go?
Well, it's two CDs, about an hour and a half worth of music, and there's a 16-page booklet with rare photographs of her father, the maestro, and of course the orchestra
I'm
at
opening it up
Dizzy's.
and taking it out now because I got my.
And the
copy.
partial proceeds, most of the proceeds go to Puerto Rico to help the musicians who have lost basically everything down there through the Jazz Foundation of America, who set up a special relief fund. So when you get this, not only will you be enjoying the music, but you'll enjoy the fact
You'll have done
that
something good.
Yeah.
Jamie, your father really believed in this, and one of the things that came out in the book was that your father believed that he was making music that could change the world, and maybe when it didn't change the world, he was a little frustrated because. So talk about the validity of what Bobby has done, not only with the music, but with the fact that there is that component to it in the scheme of your father's work.
It fits in perfectly with everything my father tried to do his whole life, which was, I mean, he did everything he could since he was a kid, since he was like a youth, to make the world a better place however he could. He was an activist from the time he was in college right to the end of his life, and especially he used his music as often as he could to make the world a better place, to raise consciousness and to, you know, speak about injustice, you know, however he could do it all the way along. And West Side Story itself, of course, is based as it is on Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. It's about intolerance and hatred and how that destroys love in the world. And so by writing West Side Story, he was bringing that whole message up to date and making it relevant to everyone in the world that he was living in. And unfortunately, this message never goes out of date. Today, we struggle with racism
All of
and
it.
hatred and intolerance as much as ever.
We're almost out of time, and I want to just, I'm going to promote everything tonight. If you never, especially for young people, and I've had some discussions with some of the young folks who work here, if you never saw West Side Story, rent it, get it. I don't know where it is. It must be on Netflix. It must be on YouTube. You will say, my goodness, it's about what's going down on my block
exactly.
today.
That's right.
So you've got to do that. The book is Famous Father Girl. I personally recommend it. Jamie really recommends it. Bobby kind of recommends it as well.
I highly recommend
I
it.
highly
Yeah.
recommend it. And of course the CD, but then the big performance is August 10th. Let's get that info.
It's at Lincoln
Sell it.
at-
Lincoln Center, where West Side Story was shot.
Yeah,
Right.
Damrush Park right there, and it'll be opening up first will be the two great poets, La Bruja and Richie Villar. And behind us, projected while we're performing the music, will be visual projections by Seis del Sur, this photo collective of award-winning South Bronx photographers. So I've always wanted to do a multimedia thing, and finally we get the opportunity to do it. And the best thing is, it's free. 7:30, be there on August 10th.
Not to be missed.
Bobby, you must be so excited.
Oh yes, oh yes. I mean, this is the main thing about this is besides celebrating
Gotta be quick, go ahead.
the maestro centennial and all his vision and his humanitarianism, is I wanted this is like my gift to my people, the Puerto Rican community, because we transformed the city culturally, artistically, musically, and we've never really gotten credit for that. So,
And Jamie, you must be excited as well.
Can't wait.
yeah.
She was much briefer than he was. Thank you both so much, Bobby Sanabria, Jamie Bernstein.
you.
And if you have further questions or comments on anything you heard on the show or anything going on in the Bronx, then email them to us at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org. You can send us a tweet at BronxTalk or post them on our Facebook page, and we'll read them on the air during a future edition of our program. Next week, back to Bronx issues, and we'll have the state and city here to talk about public housing in the Bronx. Senator Gustavo Rivera and Councilmember Richie Torres will be our guests. We'll get two perspectives on what's going on. Thanks to our producer, Helen Greenberg. Our director is Nick Marrero. And Officer Krupke, I'm not going to say it. Krupp, you? All right. Anyway, we love our NYPD, of course. Good night. See you next week.